Julie Hanson here again, reading from my book, Looking and Listening, by Petunia Rose, my pen name, Chapter 3, God's title, You Have Been Called. My title, Why Me? It's about 6.5 pages. Chapter 3, You Have Been Called. God's word given to me on 6/19/2021. The Alpha and Omega has called you his own. 6/30/2021. I have called you by name and you are mine for the kingdom of the God Most High. 7/3/2021. You have been called. Our dear children, you have been called. 7/10/2021. You are called by God to show the world my power, my might, my insurrection. Delve into the project in which you have been called. 7/12/2021. Do not hesitate and do not dismay over this project, for you have been called for this time to do my will. 7/19/2021. You are called. Come follow Jesus and be saved into eternal life. You are called. For you are called to be one with the Father, Son, and Spirit. 7/21/2021. Be prepared this day, for I have called you by name, and you are mine. Be prepared ye this day, for I have called you my own. 8/5/2021. I have called you all by name. You are called this day to follow. You are called to have peace in your life. You are called. You are called. 8/8/2021. Do not despair, little one. The Lord of heaven's army has called you his own and is watching over you. For you are called to greatness in the Lord. Be mine this day, for I have called you my child. 8/12/2021. You are called for this hour to follow my ways. You have been called. 8/21/2021. For I am with you, and I shall make your path a path to success. For you have been called to do my will. For you have been called for this hour to do my will, and you are faithful. 8/23/2021. Be not what you think you ought to be, but what I've called you to be. 8/30/2021. You are called into this hour to press on, to press forward, to follow the way of the truth. The great I Am has called you all out to be a disciple, to speak the truth. For you have been called, my children, to act, for this time calls for action. 9/11/2021. Beyond this day, a strong member of my family to be called a remnant for blessing the world with your faith. The great I Am has called you on this day. 10/8/2021. Come into the kingdom, my children. You have been called this day. 10/27/2021. You have been called. 1/5/2022. Tell him you have been called to do great things. 2/22/2022. You are called to be mine on this day. Come follow. My section begins with the title, Why Me? In 1990, I was hired at the energy company as a full-time benefited employee in the administrative department. Then, while pregnant with Grace, my first child, I said to my supervisor, when I come back from maternity leave, I would like to work part-time. That way I'll be able to spend more time with my sweet, adorable little baby, and that will make me a happier mommy. And if I'm a happier mommy, I'll be a happier and better employee. My supervisor cocked her head and said with a quick, matter-of-fact tone, sorry, that's not an option. We don't have part-time work here. I smiled and said, my position could become a job share position like they have at the corporate office. I had already looked into my options before going to her with my brilliant idea. She looked at me, rolled her eyes, and begrudgingly said, look into it, get the details, then we can talk about it. So after further researching the project, I went back to the supervisor with the information that was needed to move my full-time position into a part-time job share position. A change in the job description status required the approval of and signatures from both the corporate headquarters as well as the plant chain of command. Shortly thereafter, my supervisor told me with an excited tone, your job share position got approved. I was surprised and relieved by her newfound excitement for the change that would be occurring within our department and the plant. Eventually, my job share partner took on a full-time position. I was then offered the opportunity to work as a part-time employee, independent of a job share partner. I accepted and continued working 20 hours a week. Several years later, I became the proud mother of Isabel, my second sweet, adorable little baby girl. And as the mother of 2 daughters, I continued to work part-time. When Bee began her contracted work assignment on the cooling towers, I was unaware of the significant health risks that were associated with asbestos handling till I reviewed the 10-page training packet and attachments that she brought back to our home. The documents included warnings that asbestos handling was extremely dangerous. So wanting to fully understand the risks, I thoroughly read the documents. Then I read them again and again and again. The asbestos regulations were lengthy, yet I quickly became aware of the significance of following proper abatement, which included air sample readings. So when Bee came home after her first day of working on the cooling tower project, I casually asked her, "So where were the air sample readings?" "They weren't posted yet," she replied. Then the next day I asked, and again she responded that the readings still haven't been posted. I learned by studying the regulations that the air sample readings were supposed to be clearly posted at the job site for all the workers to easily see, or they were to be given to the workers individually. Workers were to wear air monitoring devices so the air where they were handling the asbestos containing material could be tested. The air was supposed to be sampled, then tested in order to determine the number of asbestos particles, if any, that the workers were breathing in. And if there were asbestos fibers in the air, what was the asbestos fiber count? It was critical that the workers received the results of the air sample tests, yet on day 2, the results still had not been provided. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand why the readings hadn't been posted or why the workers hadn't been given the readings. So after day 3, I once again asked Bee if the air sample results had been provided. I heard the same answer, no. But this time, the no was said in an irritated tone. She said, "I requested the readings today. Then I got the silent treatment." "What do you mean you got the silent treatment?" I asked. She said basically after I asked for the air sample readings, they ignored me. At first I was perplexed. Then I became irritated and asked, "Why would they ignore you just because you asked for the air samples?" Several days went by and still the air sample readings had not been posted, nor were the air sample results given personally to the workers. I told Bee, "Since you're working as a contractor and I'm an employee, maybe I should ask for the air sample readings myself." So that's what I did. Unbeknownst to Bee, I contacted Jageman, who was in charge of the safety department, with my request. I thought that he could certainly get the air sample readings for me. I called his office and left the following voice message. "Hi, Jageman, this is Abigail. Could you please give me a call? I have some concerns regarding the asbestos handling at the cooling towers." Although I left that specific message, I did not receive a call back. When Bee arrived home from work that day, she informed me that once again she got the silent treatment. I then told her of the message that I had left for Jageman. After a day or 2 had passed without receiving a call back, I once again called Jageman. "Hi, Jageman, this is Abigail calling again. I'm wondering about the air sample readings at the cooling towers. Bee has previously asked for them, but they have not yet been provided. She shouldn't have even had to request them, as they were supposed to have been posted at the job site or given to the workers directly. Please call me back." Yet he still did not return my call. After a few more days, I called the switchboard operator and asked her to overhead page Jageman for me. Then I sat near the phone and anxiously waited for his call. It wasn't long before he responded and called the extension number. "Hello, this is Jageman," he said. I immediately responded, "Jageman, they're breaking it. The transite panels are not being wet down and the workers aren't wearing respirators, and they won't give the workers the air sample readings." He calmly responded, "It's non-friable." Non-friable means solid, rigid material that cannot be crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder by hand pressure. I quickly responded, "It doesn't matter that it was considered non-friable because they're breaking it and busting it, which makes it no longer non-friable. And they're not wetting it, and the workers aren't wearing respirators." But again, he simply stated, "It's non-friable." My thoughts began to race. It might have been considered non-friable if it was intact, but some of the workers were breaking it apart and not wetting it, which could allow the asbestos fibers to become airborne. Bee told me that one of the workers specifically asked how they were supposed to wet it, while another worker said that there was a fire hydrant nearby and there were other wetting agents, so wetting the material was discussed, and yet it wasn't happening. The asbestos-containing material was not being wet down and it was being broken apart. I drove by the job site and saw the material laying in heaps on the ground, and I was told that the material had not been lowered to the ground in order to keep the material as intact as possible, as was written in the required in the regulations and mandated standards. I was extremely concerned about the situation. It was stressful realizing that the workers were being exposed to the asbestos, but they weren't the only ones who were being exposed. There were other employees who went on walks during their breaks through that area, and they weren't warned of the possible hazards because the required warning signs had not been posted. The warning signs that were supposed to be posted were to read, "Danger, asbestos, cancer and lung disease hazard, authorized personnel only. Respirators and protective clothing are required in this area." After Jageman responded a second time that it was non-friable, that was that. The conversation ended. I wondered, what am I missing? When I told Jagman that the workers were breaking it apart, he didn't ask any questions. He didn't ask for an elaboration, and he gave no further information to me except for stating, "It's not friable." I felt confused. Was I sticking my nose somewhere it didn't belong? I read the asbestos training documents, but do I really understand them? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Then I began doubting and second-guessing myself. Maybe I was out of line in asking about the air sample readings. Maybe I shouldn't be questioning what was going on at the cooling towers at all. Asking for the air sample readings seemed like a simple yet important request, but my questions and concerns were not being addressed. So I started thinking, maybe a safety concern doesn't really exist. Maybe it just seems like a big deal to me when it really isn't. And I continued hypothesizing. Perhaps there are more urgent matters that management needs to deal with, and so I attempted to talk myself out of my fears and concerns by making up various scenarios in my mind in which the people who were supposed to be taking the proper safety actions actually were. But the unfollowed protocols still didn't make sense to me, and it certainly didn't seem right. I was addressing a safety issue, and I knew safety-related questions, when brought to the attention of management, were supposed to be addressed immediately. Yet that's not what was happening. My thoughts went from concern to irritation, then frustration, confusion, and then anger. I continued to read the asbestos handling regulations and standards that had been provided to the workers. I read them every day, and I knew that the air samples were supposed to be provided to the workers. And I also recognized that the asbestos-containing material was not being handled as required by the regulations and standards. Besides not getting the air samples, the workers were not wearing respirators. They weren't wetting the material. The material was being broken apart, and there were no caution signs surrounding the area to warn others of the dangers. My initial intent was simply to get the air sample readings. Then the realization set in that asbestos exposure could be lethal, and so there were potentially life-threatening ramifications for the workers, their families, and even the surrounding community. Then I started thinking, what if Bee has those microscopic asbestos fibers on her clothing when she gets into her car? Those fibers could still be in there. Then the clothing that she wears into the house could also contain those fibers. Those microscopic fibers could be anywhere in our home. And that meant that Grace and Isabel could be harmed from asbestos fibers, and so could I. My mind frame changed. I needed to protect my girls. I needed to keep them safe from harm. It was in that moment that an image of Alina's protecting her baby cub came into my mind. And from that moment on, I knew that there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting those air sample readings. A few days later, as I was heading into the plant, I began thinking about the cooling towers, the asbestos, and the people in positions of authority when a powerful feeling came over me. I became alerted to the magnitude of the situation that I was facing, and I realized that what was going on was a big deal, and it was going to be a big fight. Then the story of David and Goliath flashed in my mind. I didn't know what was going to transpire, but I knew that I was meant to be part of it. It was in that moment that I looked upward to heaven and I asked, why me? I had never asked God that question before, and the fact that I asked it out loud actually took me by surprise. I didn't understand what I could possibly do. After all, I was just a part-time administrative employee, but I believed for whatever reason that God had chosen me to be involved. And so, if I was going to be part of this big deal and this big fight, whatever that might entail, then I was going to have to remove my rose-colored glasses that I wore to view the world around me. And so I did. I removed my rose-colored glasses, and that's how the quest for my truth began.